The alarm on the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit started beeping at exactly 0300 hours. Captain Daejung was already awake, sitting in his chair with a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He looked up at the main screen and saw what his sensors had detected. A ship was drifting in space, and it was not moving under its own power. Commander Hana stepped onto the bridge, her uniform perfectly pressed despite the early hour. She had that look on her face, the one that said she already knew what he was thinking and she did not like it. Daejung had served with Hana for 6 years, and he could read her expressions better than any computer readout. "Captain," she said, her voice careful and measured, "that vessel is registered as Velrathi. Their distress beacon is active, but they are in neutral space. We are not required to assist." Daejung set down his coffee cup and stood. He was a tall man with tired eyes and hands that were calloused from years of working on ships before he became a captain. He walked to the screen and studied the damaged vessel. It was spinning slowly, its hull marked with burn scars and breaches. Someone had attacked it, and recently. "How many life signs?" he asked. 17, sir. The ship is losing atmosphere. They have maybe 4 hours before their life support fails completely. Hana moved to stand beside him, lowering her voice. "Sir, we are a cargo vessel. We are carrying medical supplies to the Talos colony. If we divert now, we will be 3 days late. The contract penalties alone will cost the company millions, and if those raiders come back while we are helping, then we better work fast," Daejung said. He turned to the communications officer. "Send them a message. Tell them we are coming to help." Hana did not argue. She never did, not in front of the crew. But Daejung saw the tension in her shoulders as she moved to her station and began coordinating the rescue operation. He knew she was right about the risks. They had no military escort, no weapons worth mentioning. The Indomitable Spirit was built to carry cargo, not fight battles. But Daejung had grown up on stories of the old days on Earth, when sailors had a code about helping ships in distress. It did not matter what flag they flew or what cargo they carried. When someone was dying in the void of space, you helped them. That was the rule. That was what separated humans from animals. It took them 2 hours to reach the damaged Velrathi ship. Chief Engineer Hyunwoo was already suited up and ready with his repair team by the time they docked. Hyunwoo was a short, stocky man who could fix anything with enough time and spare parts. He also complained constantly, which Daejung found oddly comforting. "This is crazy, Captain," Hyunwoo said over the comm as he entered the Velrathi ship. "These hull breaches are extensive. We are going to need every repair kit we have, and I am seeing weapons damage here. Military grade. Whoever hit them meant to destroy them." "Do what you can," Daejung said. "Get their life support stable first, then work on the engines." The Velrathi were not like humans. They were taller, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors based on their emotions. When the Velrathi captain came aboard the Indomitable Spirit, his skin was a deep purple that Daejung's cultural database said meant shame and gratitude mixed together. The captain's name was Threxus, and he was old by Velrathi standards, with silver markings on his face that indicated high rank. "You have saved my ship and my crew," Threxus said through a translator device. His voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "We were transporting valuable goods when pirates attacked us. They damaged our engines and weapon systems. We could not fight back or run. We were waiting to die." Daejung offered him a seat in the small meeting room off the bridge. "You are not dying today. My engineer is good at his job. We will have your ship mobile again within 3 days. 3 days? Threxus's skin flickered to orange, which meant surprise.
"That is remarkable."
"Your engineer must be very skilled. But Captain, 3 days is a long time to remain here. Those pirates may return. Your ship has no significant weapons. You are putting yourself in great danger for strangers." "Maybe," Daejung said with a shrug. "But where I come from, we help people who need help. It is that simple." Threxus stared at him for a long moment. His skin shifted through several colors before settling on a soft blue that the database said meant deep respect. "You are an unusual human, Captain Daejung. I have met many of your species since you joined the Galactic Coalition. Most are cautious, always calculating the cost and benefit of every action. But you remind me of the old ways. The ways my people followed before we became obsessed with profit and politics." Over the next 3 days, Hyunwoo and his team worked around the clock to repair the Velrathi ship. The human crew shared their food with the Velrathi, even though it meant putting themselves on reduced rations. Daejung spent hours talking with Threxus, learning about Velrathi culture and history. The merchant lord was a good storyteller, and his tales of ancient Velrothi warriors and their code of honor reminded Dae-jung of the old human myths he had loved as a child. On the second day, Hana's worst fear came true. The pirates returned. 3 small attack ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire on the indomitable spirit. Dae-jung ordered all power to shields and began evasive maneuvers, but his cargo ship was not built for combat. The first volley shook the entire vessel, and alarms started screaming across every deck. "Hull breach on deck 3, Hana shouted over the noise. "Shields at 60% and falling." Then something unexpected happened. The Velrothi ship, still damaged but now mobile thanks to Hyunwoo's repairs, moved between the indomitable spirit and the attacking pirates. Its weapon systems were barely functional, but Threxus used them anyway. The Velrothi ship took hit after hit, protecting the human vessel with its own hull. "What is he doing?" Dae-jung demanded. "His ship cannot take much more damage." Threxus's voice came over the comm channel. "You protected us when we were helpless, human captain. Now I return the favor. It is our way." The battle lasted 17 minutes. Between the Velrothi ship's remaining weapons and the indomitable spirit's desperate maneuvering, they managed to destroy 1 pirate ship and damage another badly enough that all 3 attackers retreated. But the cost was high. The Velrothi ship had new hull breaches, and 2 of Threxus's crew were dead. After the pirates fled, Hyunwoo and his team worked another full day to repair both ships enough for travel. Dae-jung visited Threxus in the Velrothi medical bay, where the merchant lord was recovering from injuries sustained when his bridge lost pressure during the fight. "I am sorry for your losses," Dae-jung said quietly. "Your crew died protecting us." Threxus's skin was pale gray, the color of pain, but he managed to focus on Dae-jung. "They died with honor, defending those who showed us kindness. There is no better death for a Velrothi." He reached out with one of his 4 hands and gripped Dae-jung's arm. "Captain, I must tell you something important. In my culture, there is a sacred bond called Kethara. It is invoked when someone saves your life and expects nothing in return. Once declared, this bond can never be broken. The one who declares it owes a debt that must be repaid no matter the cost." "Threxus, you do not owe me anything," Dae-jung started to say. But the Velrothi merchant lord cut him off. "I declare Kethara between my house and yours. Captain Dae-jung of Earth, if you or your people ever need aid, call upon me and I will answer. Not because I must, but because honor demands it. This I swear on the memory of my ancestors and the lives of my crew." Dae-jung did not fully understand the weight of what Threxus was offering, but he recognized the solemnity in the Velrothi's voice. He nodded slowly. "I accept your oath, Merchant Lord Threxus, and I promise that if I ever call upon you, it will only be for something truly important." "I know you will," Threxus said, his skin finally shifting to a warm gold that meant peace and friendship. "That is why I trust you with this bond." 4 days later, both ships parted ways. The indomitable spirit continued to the Talos colony with its medical supplies, arriving a week late and facing heavy contract penalties. Hana never said "I told you so," but Dae-jung saw it in her eyes every time she reviewed the financial reports. Hyunwoo was more direct. "Captain, we just lost 3 months of profit helping strangers. The company is going to be furious." "Maybe," Dae-jung said, looking at the star chart on his screen. "But we saved 17 lives and made a friend. Some things are worth more than money." Hana looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "I hope you are right, sir. I really do." At the time, Dae-jung had no idea how important that day would become. He could not know that 20 years later, he would invoke Kethara and change the fate of humanity forever. All he knew was that he had done what he thought was right, and he could sleep peacefully knowing that somewhere in the galaxy, 17 Velrothi were alive because he had chosen kindness over profit. It seemed like a small thing at the time, just one good deed among billions that happened every day across the galaxy, but sometimes the smallest acts of kindness have the biggest consequences. 5 years had changed everything. Captain Dae-jung was now Admiral Dae-jung, commanding a small fleet of patrol ships in the outer colonies. Commander Hana had her own ship now, the Steadfast, and she was making a name for herself as a brilliant tactical officer. Hyunwoo had been promoted to chief engineer of the entire colonial defense fleet. Life was good for humanity in the Galactic Coalition. They had earned respect through hard work and careful diplomacy. That was why Ambassador Yuna's mission to the Korthani homeworld was so important. The Korthani Empire was one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, with technology and influence that made them a major power in the coalition. For 5 years, humanity had been quietly negotiating mining rights in the Talos sector, a region rich in rare minerals that both species wanted. The Korthani were not happy about sharing, but they had finally agreed to discussions. Yuna was young for an ambassador, only 38 years old, but she was smart and patient. She had spent 3 years learning Korthani culture and customs. She knew which colors to wear at formal events, which foods to avoid at diplomatic dinners, and exactly how to phrase requests so they sounded respectful to Korthani ears. Earth's government had high hopes for her mission. Lieutenant Commander Jin-Ho led her security detail. He was a careful man who did not like taking chances with the ambassador's safety. Before they left Earth, he had reviewed the security arrangements 3 times and still found things that worried him. The Korthani had refused to allow human weapons at the ceremony. They said it would be an insult to their hospitality. Jin-Ho did not like it, but diplomacy required compromise. The delegation arrived on Korthani Prime on a Tuesday. The planet was beautiful in a cold way, with crystal towers that reached into purple skies and gardens filled with plants that glowed in the dark. The Korthani themselves were tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that had no pupils. They moved gracefully and spoke in musical voices that their translator devices turned into perfect English. For 3 days, everything went perfectly. The negotiations were productive. Yuna made several concessions that the Korthani appreciated, and in return they agreed to share mining rights in 3 systems. It looked like humanity had just secured a major economic victory. The delegation was excited, sending reports back to Earth about their success. On the 4th day, the Korthani invited the human delegation to a ceremonial dinner in the Grand Hall of Ancestors. It was a great honor, they explained. No other coalition species had been invited to such an event in over 200 years. Yuna was thrilled. Jin-Ho was worried. Something feels wrong, he told Yuna privately before the dinner. They are being too friendly, too accommodating. The Korthani are known for being proud and difficult in negotiations. The sudden cooperation worries me. Yuna smiled at his concern. Jin-Ho, you are paid to be paranoid. But sometimes people are just being nice. Maybe we impressed them with our sincerity. Not everything is a conspiracy. Maybe, Jin-Ho said, but he did not sound convinced. Just stay close to me during the dinner, and if I say we need to leave, we leave immediately. No arguments. The Grand Hall of Ancestors was enormous, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. Thousands of Korthani attended the dinner, all dressed in their finest ceremonial robes. The human delegation was seated at a place of honor near the center of the hall. There were 48 humans total, including diplomats, assistants, and security personnel. The dinner began with speeches and toasts. The Korthani High Chancellor spoke about friendship between species and the importance of cooperation. Yuna responded with a gracious speech thanking the Korthani for their hospitality. Everything seemed perfect. Then the lights went out. For 3 seconds, the hall was completely dark. When the lights came back on, Jin-Ho saw armed Korthani soldiers surrounding the human delegation. They wore combat armor and carried weapons that were very much not ceremonial. Jin-Ho reached for his sidearm before remembering he did not have one. The Korthani had made them leave all weapons at the embassy. What is the meaning of this? Yuna demanded, standing up from her seat. Her voice was steady, but Jin-Ho could see fear in her eyes. We are here under diplomatic immunity. This is a violation of coalition law. The High Chancellor stood on the raised platform at the front of the hall. His musical voice was cold when he spoke. You humans have become too confident, too ambitious. You have been in the galaxy for less than a century, yet you demand the same rights as species who have earned their place over thousands of years. The coalition has decided that your expansion must be stopped. Consider this a lesson in humility. Jin-Ho understood what was about to happen. He lunged toward Yuna, trying to shield her with his body. Other security personnel did the same for their charges. But they were unarmed and outnumbered 50-1. The Korthani opened fire. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The weapons the Korthani used were designed for maximum pain. Humans fell screaming, their bodies burning from energy weapons set to the highest setting. Jin-Ho felt something slam into his chest and suddenly he could not breathe. He collapsed next to Yuna, who had been hit 3 times. Her hand found his in the chaos. Tell them, she whispered, blood on her lips. Tell Earth what happened here. Do not let them cover this up. Jinho's vision was going dark, but he managed to reach the emergency transmitter hidden in his jacket. It was against protocol to bring such devices to diplomatic events, but Jinho had never been good at following rules when it came to protecting people. With the last of his strength, he activated the transmitter and sent a single burst transmission toward the nearest human relay station. The message was simple. Korthani betrayal. Coalition complicit. All dead, do not trust them. Avenge us. Then Jinho died, his hand still holding Yuna's. The massacre took less than 5 minutes from start to finish. 48 humans lay dead in the Grand Hall of Ancestors. The Korthani soldiers moved efficiently, removing the bodies and cleaning up the evidence. By morning, it would look like nothing had happened, but Jinho's message had gotten through. It reached Earth 3 days later, and the reaction was immediate and furious. Across the planet, billions of people demanded justice. They wanted war. They wanted revenge. But Earth's government faced a terrible reality. Humanity was still weak compared to the old powers of the galaxy. The Korthani alone could destroy the entire human fleet in a month. And if the Coalition was truly involved in the massacre, then humanity had no friends and no hope of victory. The Coalition Council met in emergency session. They declared the massacre a tragic incident caused by rogue elements within the Korthani military. They offered compensation to the families of the dead and promised a full investigation, but everyone knew it was a lie. Jinho's message had been clear. This was not the work of rogue soldiers. This was policy. Earth's government was given a choice. Accept the Coalition's explanation and move on, or face economic sanctions and possible military action from multiple species. The choice was not really a choice at all. Earth agreed to the Coalition's terms, and the investigation quietly disappeared. Admiral Daejung watched all of this happen from his office on the colony station. He read Jinho's message 100 times, memorizing every word. He attended the memorial services for Yuna and the other victims. He stood with the families and listened to them cry, and he felt something cold and hard forming in his chest where his heart used to be. Captain Hana visited him one night, finding him alone in his darkened office, staring at the star charts on his wall. She sat down without asking permission, something she only did when things were very bad. I have been doing some research, she said quietly, calling in favors accessing classified intelligence. The Coalition's story does not match the facts. I have evidence that at least 5 council members knew about the attack in advance. They wanted to send humanity a message to put us back in our place. Daejung turned to look at her. Does Earth's government know this? They know. They do not care. Or rather, they care more about survival than justice. And maybe they are right, sir. We are not strong enough to fight back, not yet. Maybe not ever. Then we make ourselves strong enough, Daejung said. Hana looked at him with worried eyes. Sir, what are you planning? Daejung did not answer directly. Instead, he pulled up a file on his computer. It was old, from 5 years ago. A cargo mission that had gone wrong. A Velrathi merchant ship in distress. A sacred oath sworn in a medical bay. Do you remember Merchant Lord Threxus? He asked. Hana frowned, then her eyes widened as she remembered. The Velrathi we saved. The one who swore that oath. Sir, you cannot be serious. That was just ceremony, just words. No, Daejung said quietly. For the Velrathi, Cathara is everything. It is more important than money. More important than politics. It is more important than life itself. Threxus told me that if I ever called on him, he would answer. I believed him then. I believe him now. Admiral, Hana said carefully. What you are thinking about is treason. If you go behind Earth's government to seek revenge, you will be hunted by your own people. Everything you have built, your entire career, it will all be destroyed. Daejung looked at the memorial photo on his desk. It showed Yuna smiling at a diplomatic event, full of hope and optimism about humanity's future. She had. Finding Merchant Lord Threxus took Admiral Daejung 6 months. The Velrathi had become even more powerful since their first meeting, controlling trade routes across 3 sectors and commanding a private fleet that rivaled some government militaries. He did not advertise his location, and for good reason. Powerful merchants made powerful enemies. Daejung used every contact he had, called in every favor he was owed. Captain Hana helped, using her intelligence network to track Threxus's movements through shipping records and business transactions. Finally, they learned that the merchant lord would be at a neutral trading station called Crossroads for a major auction. It was the perfect place for a secret meeting. Dai Jung traveled to Crossroads alone, wearing civilian clothes instead of his uniform. If anyone recognized him, the mission would be over before it began. The station was massive, a city in space where dozens of species came to trade everything from rare minerals to classified technology. It was also one of the few places where coalition law was more suggestion than requirement. He found Threxus in a private viewing room overlooking the main auction hall. The Velrathi had aged in the 20 years since their first meeting. His silver markings had spread across more of his face, and his movements were slower. But his eyes were still sharp when he turned to see who had entered his private space. For a moment, Threxus just stared at him. Then his skin shifted to gold, the color of recognition and joy. Captain Daejung, though I suppose you are Admiral now. I heard of your promotion. I have followed your career with interest over the years. Merchant Lord Threxus, Daejung said, bowing in the Velrathi fashion. Thank you for seeing me. I always knew you would come, Threxus said quietly. His skin shifted to purple, the color of sadness and understanding. When I heard about the massacre on Korthani Prime, I knew. I knew that eventually you would remember our oath. Sit, please. We have much to discuss. They sat in chairs overlooking the auction below, where traders bid on cargo containers full of exotic goods. For a while, neither spoke. Daejung was not sure how to begin. How did you ask someone to risk everything for your revenge? Tell me what happened, Threxus said. I know the official story, but I want to hear the truth from you. So Daejung told him. He explained about Ambassador Yuna's mission, about the ceremonial dinner that turned into a slaughter. He shared the intelligence that Captain Hana had gathered, proving that Coalition Council members had known about the attack beforehand. He talked about Jin Ho's final message and Earth's government decision to accept the Coalition's lies. 48 people, Daejung said, his voice raw. 48 humans who believed in diplomacy and peace. They were murdered to teach humanity a lesson about knowing our place. And our own government will not seek justice because we are too weak to stand against the old powers. Threxus's skin had turned dark blue, the color of anger. The Korthani have always been arrogant, but to violate diplomatic immunity, to murder ambassadors, that is beyond arrogance. That is evil. And you say the Coalition Council approved this? At least 5 members knew in advance. They wanted humanity reminded that we are newcomers, that we do not have the same rights as ancient species. They wanted us frightened and obedient. Daejung took a deep breath. That is why I am here, Merchant Lord. I am here to invoke Kethara. The room became very quiet. Threxus's skin shifted through several colors, settling on gray, the color of great burden. You understand what you are asking? Kethara is not a small favor between friends. If I honor this debt, it will cost me everything. My fleet, my wealth, possibly my people's future. The Velrathi will become your allies in a war against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. I know, Daejung said. I know what I am asking, and I know what it will cost you. But Threxus, your people have a saying. You told it to me 20 years ago. You said that some debts are worth dying for because honor without cost is just empty words. I did say that, Threxus admitted. And I meant it. But Daejung, I must ask you something. Is this about justice, or is it about revenge? Because there is a difference. Daejung considered the question carefully. It is about both. I want revenge for the 48 who died. But I also want justice. I want the galaxy to know that you cannot murder humans and face no consequences. I want every species to understand that humanity remembers. Maybe that makes me a monster. I do not care anymore. Threxus studied him for a long moment. Then the Velrathi stood and walked to the window, looking down at the auction below. 20 years ago, you saved my life and my crew. You expected nothing in return. When raiders attacked while you were helping us, you could have run. Instead, you stayed and fought beside us. You are the reason I am alive today. He turned back to Daejung. and his skin was now silver, the color of resolution. I will honor Kethara. I will give you my fleet and my warriors. We will make the Korthani and their coalition allies pay for what they did. But Daejung, you must understand something. After this, there is no going back. For either of us. We will be outlaws, traitors to the coalition order. Our names will be cursed or celebrated but never forgotten. I understand, Daejung said. I have already accepted that cost. Then we begin planning, Threxy said. But first, you must meet my war council. They need to understand why I am committing our people to this path. Over the next 3 months, Daejung and Threxis built their conspiracy carefully. They could not afford mistakes. If word leaked to the coalition or Earth's government, everything would end before it began. Captain Hana was the first person they brought into the plan. She arrived at Crossroads with her ship, the Steadfast, and 3 other vessels commanded by officers she trusted absolutely. These were people who had served with Daejung for years, people who were tired of watching their government bow to bullies. Engineer Hyunwoo was now an admiral himself, commanding a repair station in the outer colonies. He did not like the plan when he first heard it. This is insane, he said bluntly. Even with the Velrathi fleet, we cannot win a straight fight against the Korthani and their allies. We will be destroyed. Then we do not fight a straight fight, Daejung said. We hit them fast and hard, targeting specific locations. Not their civilians, but their leaders and military infrastructure. We make them hurt. We make them remember. Intelligence Officer Misun provided the targeting data they needed. She was a quiet woman who worked for Earth's External Intelligence Service, but she was secretly loyal to Daejung. She had been one of Yuna's friends. The massacre had broken something in her, and she wanted blood. I have been collecting information on the Korthani military for 5 years, Misun explained, projecting holographic maps on the conference table. I know where their command centers are, where their fleets are stationed, where their leaders sleep at night. I can give you everything you need to hit them where it hurts most. Specialist Taimin was the final piece of the puzzle. He was a cyber warfare expert who could hack any system in the galaxy given enough time. He had been working quietly to map coalition communication networks for months, preparing for this moment. When you attack, the coalition will try to mobilize their fleets, Taimin said. But if I can shut down their communication networks at the right moment, they will be blind and confused. You will have a window of maybe 72 hours before they restore full communications. That is how long you have to do maximum damage. The plan came together slowly. They would strike simultaneously at multiple targets. The Korthani Imperial Palace, where the massacre was ordered. The homeworlds of the 5 coalition council members who had approved the attack. Key military installations. Every target was chosen for maximum symbolic impact. Threxis committed his entire merchant fleet, over 200 ships that could be converted for combat. They were not military vessels, but they were fast and well-armed. Combined with the human ships that Daejung could muster, they would have a force of nearly 300 vessels. It is still not enough, Hyunwoo insisted during one planning session. The Korthani have over 1,000 ships, even if we surprise them. Even if Taimin's hacking works perfectly, we will lose most of our fleet. I know, Daejung said quietly. This was never about winning a war. This is about sending a message. We are telling the galaxy that humanity will not be pushed around anymore. We are showing them that there are consequences for murdering us. Even if it costs us everything? Hana asked. Especially if it costs us everything, Daejung said. That is what makes it meaningful. If we do this and survive, people will say we were lucky. But if we do this and die, people will remember forever. They will tell stories about the humans and Velrathi who chose honor over survival. Threxis's skin was gold as he listened to this. You understand my people very well, Admiral. That is exactly how we think. A life lived safely is a life wasted, but a death in service of honor? That is immortality. As the weeks passed, more people joined their cause. Ships' captains who were tired of taking orders from corrupt politicians, soldiers who wanted revenge for fallen friends, engineers and technicians who believed in the mission. Each person knew the risks. Each person came anyway. They trained in secret, running combat simulations and practicing coordinated attack. The attack began at exactly midnight, Corthani Prime Standard Time. Specialist Tae Min activated his cyber weapons, and across the coalition, communication networks started to fail. It was subtle at first, just minor delays and dropped connections. But within minutes, entire systems went dark. Military commanders found themselves unable to coordinate with their fleets. Government officials could not reach their advisors. The carefully maintained network that held the coalition together suddenly stopped working. In the confusion, the human Velrathi fleet emerged from hyperspace at 5 different locations simultaneously. The largest group, led by Admiral Dae Jung's flagship, appeared in orbit around Corthani Prime. The Corthani defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were scattered and disorganized. By the time they understood what was happening, Dae Jung's ships were already launching their attack. The Imperial Palace sat on a mountain overlooking the capital city. It was a beautiful structure of crystal and steel, built to show the power and glory of the Corthani Empire. Admiral Dae Jung looked at it through his command screen and felt nothing but cold determination. This was where Ambassador Yuna and 47 others had been murdered. This was where the order had been given. Target locked, his weapons officer reported. Civilian areas are clear. Only the palace and government buildings are in the strike zone. Dae Jung had been very clear about this part of the plan. They would not target civilians. This was not about killing innocent people. This was about destroying the symbols of power and the people who hid behind them. Every target had been chosen with care to minimize civilian casualties. Fire, Dae Jung ordered. His flagship and 20 other ships opened fire together. The combined firepower was immense. The Imperial Palace and the government complex surrounding it simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, symbols of ancient power. The next moment there was only fire and rubble. The High Chancellor who had ordered the massacre was in that palace. So were most of the Corthani military leadership. They died without warning, without a chance to surrender or explain, just like Yuna and the others had died 5 years ago. Target destroyed, the weapons officer said. Moving to secondary targets. Across Corthani Prime, military installations began exploding. Shipyards, weapons factories, command centers, everything that made the Corthani Empire powerful, was being systematically destroyed. The Corthani defense fleet tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and surprised. More importantly, they could not coordinate their efforts because all their communications were still down. At the same time, Captain Hana's ships were attacking a coalition council member's homeworld. She felt sick as she gave the order to fire, but she did it anyway. This council member had known about the massacre. He had voted to approve it. He had helped cover it up afterward. He deserved what was coming. Merchant Lord Threxus commanded the Velrathi fleet at a third target, a major Corthani military base near the border. His ships fought with a fury that surprised even Dae Jung. The Velrathi warriors had embraced this mission completely. For them, this was not just about honoring Cathara. This was about proving that honor still meant something in a cynical galaxy. But the Velrathi were paying a terrible price for their honor. Threxus watched as ship after ship was destroyed by Corthani defenders. The Velrathi merchant vessels were tough, but they were not true warships. Against military-grade weapons, they were vulnerable. His warriors died bravely, but they still died. Sir, his second-in-command reported, we have lost 40% of our fleet. The enemy is regrouping. We should consider withdrawing. Threxus's skin was bright red, the color of battle fury. No retreat. We finish what we started. That is the Velrathi way. The battle raged for 72 hours, just as Tae Min had predicted. For 3 days, the combined human Velrathi fleet struck at targets across coalition space. They destroyed government buildings, military bases, shipyards, and command centers. The damage was enormous. The psychological impact was even greater. The galaxy watched in shock as 2 relatively small species challenged the established order. News of the attack spread quickly despite the communication blackouts. Everyone wanted to know who was brave or crazy enough to attack the Corthani Empire and the Coalition Council. Then, as the 72-hour window began to close, Admiral Dae Jung sent a message. It was broadcast on every frequency and every language so that no one in the galaxy could miss it. He appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds wearing his uniform, standing on the bridge of his flagship. My name is Admiral Dae Jung of Earth, he began. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fire. 5 years ago, the Korthani Empire murdered 48 human diplomats in a planned attack. They did this with the knowledge and approval of Coalition Council members who wanted to teach humanity a lesson about knowing our place. Our own government accepted their lies and covered up this crime. He paused, letting that sink in. Across the galaxy, billions of people watched and listened. For 5 years, we waited for justice. It never came. So today we took justice for ourselves. Let this be a lesson to every species in the galaxy. Humanity is patient. We will exhaust every diplomatic option. We will try every peaceful solution. But if you cross certain lines, if you murder our people and think there will be no consequences, you are wrong. His hands gripped the railing in front of him. We never forget a kindness. 20 years ago, a Velrathi merchant saved my life. Today, his people are dying beside us because honor demanded it. We never forget a debt, and we never forgive a wrong. The Korthani thought we were weak because we valued peace. They thought we were naive because we believed in justice. Now they know better. Behind him, alarms started sounding. The Coalition had finally restored their communications and was sending every available ship to stop the attack. Daejung knew his time was running out, but he needed to finish his message. Many of us will die today, most of us probably. But we die knowing that we made the galaxy remember something important. Humanity never lets a favor slide, and our retribution can shatter worlds. We came to the stars seeking friends. We found predators and cowards instead. So we became something else, something you should have feared from the beginning. He looked directly into the camera, and for a moment it seemed like he was staring at each person watching individually. We became inevitable. The transmission ended. Moments later, Daejung's flagship was hit by multiple missiles. The bridge lost atmosphere and alarms screamed. He ordered the evacuation of non-essential personnel, but he stayed at his post. A captain did not abandon his ship. Across the battlefield, Engineer Hyunwoo made a decision. His ship was badly damaged and could not retreat, but it could still move. He ordered his crew to evacuate, then pointed his crippled vessel at a Korthani carrier and activated the engines. The collision destroyed both ships, but it also created an opening for 12 human vessels to escape. Merchant Lord Threxis fought until the very end. His flagship was surrounded by Korthani warships taking fire from every direction. His bridge crew was dead or dying. His ship was falling apart around him. But he still stood at his post, skin bright silver with resolution. "Tell the humans," he said to his communications officer with his final breath, "that I died honoring Cathara. Tell them it was an honor to fight beside them." Then his ship exploded, and Merchant Lord Threxis became a legend. Captain Hana survived, but barely. Her ship was crippled, drifting in space with no engines and failing life support. She sent one final message to Earth before her communications went dead. Mission accomplished. The galaxy will remember this day. Tell them we did not die for nothing. Intelligence Officer Misun was killed when a Korthani fighter squadron caught her ship during a retreat. She died instantly when a missile hit her bridge. But before she died, she had transmitted all her intelligence data to resistance groups across the galaxy. The information about Coalition corruption and Korthani war crimes would fuel revolutions for years to come. Specialist Timon vanished during the battle. Some said his ship was destroyed. Others claimed he escaped and went into hiding. The truth was that Timon had planned for this. He had a second identity prepared, a new ship waiting in a hidden location. He disappeared into the shadows, becoming a ghost story that frightened Coalition security services for decades. Admiral Daejung's flagship held together just long enough. As Coalition reinforcements arrived in overwhelming numbers, he gave the order to abandon ship. Most of his crew managed to reach the escape pods, but Daejung stayed on the bridge, manually piloting his dying ship toward a cluster of Korthani destroyers. His last thought was of Ambassador Yuna, young and hopeful, believing in a better future. He hoped she would be proud of what he had done. He hoped history would judge him kindly. Then his ship hit the Korthani formation, and Admiral Daejung joined the 48 in whatever waited beyond death. When the 72 hours ended, the human Velrathi fleet was destroyed. 240 ships had been lost. Thousands of warriors were dead. The Velrathi merchant fleet was reduced to a fraction of its former size. The human ships that participated were gone, their crews killed or captured, but the damage they had inflicted was catastrophic. 6 months after the attack, The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Korthani Empire had collapsed completely. Without their leadership and military strength, the empire fragmented into dozens of smaller states that immediately began fighting each other for power. What had been one of the strongest forces in the galaxy was now a collection of squabbling warlords. The Coalition Council had reformed, but it was not the same organization. 3 council members had died in the attacks, and 5 others had resigned in disgrace when evidence of their involvement in the massacre became public. Thanks to intelligence officer Mi-sun's data, everyone now knew that the diplomatic massacre had been approved at the highest levels. The cover-up had been exposed. New council members were elected, mostly younger politicians who promised reform and accountability. They passed new laws protecting diplomatic missions. They established an independent commission to investigate past abuses. They did everything they could to prove that the coalition had changed. But everyone knew the real reason for these changes. They were afraid. Afraid that what happened to the Korthani could happen to them. Earth's government faced its own reckoning. When Daijung's message was broadcast, revealing that Earth had known about the coalition's involvement and chosen to stay silent, there were riots in the streets. People demanded answers. How could their government let the murders go unpunished? How could they bow to the very people who had killed their citizens? The Prime Minister tried to explain that they had no choice, that humanity was too weak to challenge the coalition. But the public did not want to hear excuses. In the next election, almost every government official who had supported the cover-up lost their position. A new government came to power, one that promised Earth would never again sacrifice justice for political convenience. Publicly, this new Earth government condemned Admiral Daejung and his conspirators as rogue elements who had violated orders and started an unauthorized war. They had to say this to maintain diplomatic relations with what remained of the coalition. But privately, they built monuments to the dead. They made sure that Yuna, Jin-ho, Daejung, Hyunwoo, Mi-sun, and all the others were remembered as heroes. Fleet Admiral Su-jin was promoted to command humanity's entire military. She had been one of Daejung's students years ago, and she had learned his lessons well. She immediately began expanding the fleet, upgrading weapon systems and training new officers in aggressive tactics. Under her leadership, humanity's military became something to be feared. The first time a coalition species tried to take advantage of humanity's supposed weakness after the attack, Su-jin responded with overwhelming force. She did not start a war, but she made it very clear that humanity was no longer a target. Her message was simple and direct. You can live in peace with us, or you can find out what happened to the Korthani. Your choice. Every species chose peace. The lesson had been learned. The Velrathi became humanity's closest allies. The attack had devastated their merchant fleet and cost them thousands of lives. But instead of regretting their decision, they honored it. Merchant Lord Threxus became their greatest hero, the one who proved that Cathara was not just empty words but a sacred commitment worth dying for. Young Velrathi warriors started training with human marines, learning tactics and building friendships. Trade between humanity and the Velrathi expanded rapidly. Within a generation, the two species had become so intertwined that most people forgot they had once been strangers. The bond formed in blood and sacrifice became something beautiful and lasting. Captain Hana survived the battle, though her ship was completely destroyed. She spent 3 months drifting in an escape pod before a neutral merchant vessel found her. When she returned to human space, she expected to be arrested and tried for treason. Instead, she found that the political situation had changed completely. The New Earth government quietly offered her a pardon if she would agree to retire and stay silent about what happened. Hana refused. She had not sacrificed everything just to hide in shame. Instead, she established an independent colony at the edge of Coalition space. She called it Hope's End, a name that meant both the death of false hope and the beginning of real hope. Hope's End became a haven for people who did not fit in with either Earth's government or the Coalition. Refugees, dissidents, idealists, and warriors who believed that some principles were worth fighting for. Hana led them well, building a society based on the values that Daejung had taught her. Justice over convenience, honor over profit, truth over politics. Specialist Taiman did disappear just as planned, but he did not retire or hide. Instead, he became the galaxy's most effective intelligence operative, working in the shadows to protect humanity's interests. No one knew his face. No one knew his real name. But coalition security services whispered stories about a ghost who could access any system and destroy any enemy. They called him the Shadow. They were terrified of him. Taemin made sure that humanity would never again be caught unprepared. He built networks of informants across the galaxy. He created backdoors into every major government system. He collected information on everyone who might pose a threat to humanity. And whenever someone tried to hurt humans, they found themselves facing mysterious accidents, leaked scandals, or economic disasters. No one could prove it was him. But everyone suspected. And that fear, that uncertainty, that was exactly what Taemin wanted. He had learned from Daijung that sometimes the threat of retribution was more effective than retribution itself. The Daijung doctrine became official Earth policy, though they never called it by that name. The principle was simple. Humanity would always prefer diplomacy to war, negotiation to violence, peace to conflict, but there were lines that could not be crossed. Harm humanity's citizens without cause and there would be consequences. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually retribution would come, and it would be absolute. Other species studied the 72-hour war, as it came to be called. They analyzed the tactics, the strategy, the coordination. What they found surprised them. The human Velrathi fleet had been outnumbered and outgunned. By every military calculation, they should have been destroyed in the first hour. But they had won anyway, not won in the traditional sense. They had lost most of their ships. Most of their people had died. But they had achieved their objective. They had made the galaxy remember that actions have consequences, and in doing so, they had changed the balance of power forever. Military academies across the galaxy now taught courses on the 72-hour war. They studied how a smaller force had defeated a larger one through surprise, commitment, and absolute willingness to pay any price for victory. They taught that sometimes losing a battle meant winning a war, that sometimes dying for a cause was more powerful than living for one. On Earth, in a quiet park in the capital city, they built a memorial. It was simple. Just a black stone wall with names carved into it. Ambassador Yuna and the 47 others who died in the massacre. Admiral Daejung and the human warriors who died seeking justice. Merchant Lord Threxus and the Velrathi who honored their oath. Engineer Hyunwoo. Intelligence Officer Misun and all the others who gave their lives. At the base of the memorial, a simple inscription in both human and Velrathi languages. They showed us kindness. We honored our debts. Together, we made the galaxy remember. Humanity never lets a favor slide, and our retribution can shatter worlds. People came from across the galaxy to see that memorial. Some came to pay respects. Some came to understand. Some came to be reminded of what happened when you pushed humanity too far. But everyone who came left understanding the same truth. Humans were different from other species. They remembered things longer. They cared about things deeper. They would sacrifice more for principles that others considered abstract. A young human recruit, fresh from basic training, visited the memorial one day. She was nervous about her first assignment, worried about living up to the legacy of those who had come before. A Velrathi veteran saw her standing there looking at the names and approached. "You wonder if you can be as brave as they were," the Velrathi said. It was not a question. His skin was silver, the color of understanding. "I wondered the same thing when I was young. I fought in the 72-hour war. I served under Merchant Lord Threxus himself. What was it like?" the recruit asked. The Velrathi was quiet for a moment, his skin shifting through several colors. "Terrifying, glorious, necessary. We knew most of us would die. We knew the galaxy would condemn us, but we also knew that some things are worth dying for. Honor without cost is just empty words. Your Admiral Daejung taught us that. He reminded us what my people used to be before we became obsessed with profit and safety." "Do you regret it?" the recruit asked. "Do you regret following him?" The Velrathi touched the memorial stone, his fingers tracing Threxus's name. "I regret that so many died. I regret that it was necessary. But I do not regret honoring Cathara. Merchant Lord Threxus made a sacred oath, and we kept it. Because of that, my people can walk with pride again. We are not just merchants anymore. We are warriors. We are people who keep our promises, even when it costs us everything." He looked at the young recruit with ancient eyes.